In the heart of Sweden, one family has controlled industries worth hundreds of billions of dollars across 6 generations without ever appearing on a rich list, granting interviews, or attracting meaningful public scrutiny. The Wallenbergs own significant stakes in AstraZeneca, Ericsson, and dozens of other companies listed on global exchanges. Their influence touches industries that shape daily life across Europe and beyond. They helped save victims from Nazi Germany and simultaneously banked for the Nazi regime. As wars were fought and governments changed, the Wallenberg position only grew stronger. Their method was invisibility, maintained through a network of foundations that keeps their immense wealth intact, concentrated, and legally shielded across generations. The story begins with André Oscar Wallenberg, a young naval officer who returned from the United States in the mid-1800s carrying a specific ambition. Sweden at the time had potential, but almost no mechanism to fund it. Accessing capital meant approaching the central bank directly. There was no competition, no creative financing, and no real engine for economic growth. André had read about an alternative model developed in Scotland, one based on pooling small savings and circulating that money through the broader economy. In 1856, he founded Stockholm's Enskilda Bank, Sweden's first private bank. The institution gave Swedish industry a way to fund itself and gave the Wallenberg family the foundation on which everything else would be built. André's son, Knut Wallenberg, joined the bank and pushed it into international territory. The real structural shift came when Swedish law restricted banks from holding too many industrial shares. Rather than divest, the family created Investor AB in 1916, a holding company that would become the central vehicle for their industrial empire. Knut and his wife Alice had no children. Instead of distributing their wealth among heirs, they poured it into Sweden's development, funding projects across Stockholm and establishing the Knut and Alice Wallenberg Foundation in 1917. That foundation was dedicated to research, science, technology, and medicine. Knut also served as Sweden's Minister of Foreign Affairs from 1914 to 1917, weaving the family name into Swedish political life, as well as its financial infrastructure. Responsibility for the bank then passed to Knut's half-brother, Marcus Wallenberg Sr. Marcus had no interest in luxury or public recognition. He was known to wear the same jackets until the fabric wore thin, flipping them inside out to extend their use. Every resource went back into the business. He involved himself in companies that would become Atlas Copco, ABB, Norsk Hydro, Scania, and Stora Enso. After World War I, as Europe's economies fractured, Marcus became one of the continent's most relied upon negotiators and arbitrators. He assumed he would inherit everything Knut had built. Instead, Knut placed his entire fortune into a foundation before his death. Marcus initially felt deceived. In time, he understood. Without a foundation structure, the Wallenberg wealth would have been divided among multiple heirs and gradually dissolved. The foundation kept it concentrated, controlled, and growing. The family's greatest test arrived with World War II. Marcus's sons, Jacob and Marcus Jr., inherited the responsibility and walked directly into one of history's most compromised positions. Jacob joined Stockholm's Enskilda Bank in 1918, became vice CEO by 1920, and CEO by 1927, a position he held for 19 years. He steered the bank through the Great Depression and into the war years. Sweden declared neutrality, but the Wallenbergs operated on both sides of the conflict simultaneously. Jacob became one of Sweden's primary trade representatives to Nazi Germany. His younger brother Marcus worked with the Allies. Together, they maintained relationships with opposing powers, while Sweden formally stood apart from both. The bank's involvement with Nazi Germany went beyond trade. Since Stockholm's Enskilda Bank cooperated with the Nazi regime and was later alleged to have helped launder assets looted from occupied territories, when American troops uncovered documents after the war, they revealed that the bank had maintained a covert relationship with Bosch, the major German industrial company, and had helped the Nazis conceal their assets. In 1945, U.S. Treasury officials blacklisted the Wallenberg brothers, designating them as special blocked nationals. Their reputation inside Sweden collapsed along with it. Yet while the bank was entangled in Nazi financial operations, the family was simultaneously involved in efforts to bring the regime down. The German resistance movement centered on a group determined to overthrow Hitler, though needed outside support from Britain and the United States. The Wallenberg brothers served as covert intermediaries, passing messages between the German resistance and Allied forces. Jacob met with German resistance leader Karl Goerdeler in 1943. It was his final trip to Berlin during the war. His connection to the resistance had been exposed, and returning would have meant execution. In July 1944, the resistance launched the 20th of July assassination plot against Hitler. Jacob had been asked to receive a messenger in Stockholm confirming the coup's success. The bomb detonated, but Hitler survived. The messenger was captured and executed. Goerdeler was killed shortly after. The family's most celebrated contribution during the war came through a different channel entirely. Raoul Wallenberg, Jacob's nephew, was sent to Budapest in 1944 as a Swedish diplomat with an extraordinary mission. Hungary's 700,000 Jews were being deported to extermination camps. Raoul, clever and willing to take risks that official diplomacy avoided, began issuing forged Swedish protective passports to Jewish Hungarians, declaring them under Swedish protection. He intercepted deportation trains and pulled people off them. He interrupted death marches. In the final days of the war, when the Nazis prepared to kill the 70,000 Jews remaining in the Budapest central ghetto, Raoul intervened directly, negotiating and threatening until the order was abandoned. He saved tens of thousands of lives. In January 1945, Soviet forces entered Budapest and arrested Raoul Wallenberg. The Soviets accused him of espionage. He disappeared into Soviet custody for decades. The Soviet Union denied knowing his whereabouts. Eventually, they claimed he had died of a heart attack in 1947 at the age of 35. What is documented is that during the same period, the Wallenberg family was negotiating a $250 million loan to Stalin's regime. Whether the family could have used that leverage to press for Raoul's release remains one of the unresolved questions attached to the Wallenberg name. The Swedish government also stayed largely silent. A man who had rescued thousands from Nazi extermination was left without serious institutional advocacy from the country that had sent him. Jacob resigned as CEO in 1946. Marcus Jr. took control and spent the next 5 decades reshaping the empire. He transformed Atlas Diesel into Atlas Copco. I helped develop Sweden's Saab fighter jet program and managed industrial trade through the post-war reconstruction. He remained central to every major decision until his death in 1982. His elder son, Mark Wallenberg, had been groomed from childhood to take over. Mark worked to merge Skandinaviska Banken and Stockholm's Enskilda Bank into the institution now known as SEB. The pressure on him was enormous and relentless. In 1971, at the age of 47, Mark Wallenberg took his own life. His brother Peter had taken a different path. Rather than entering the family business directly, Peter had gone to work at Atlas Copco in Africa, starting from the ground floor and building his own career. His relationship with his father had been difficult, and he had deliberately created distance from the family's expectations. Mark's death changed everything. The family needed leadership, and Peter stepped in despite widespread doubt about whether he was the right person to carry the name forward. After his father's death in 1982, Peter took over as head of the family business. He proved the doubters wrong. He restructured multiple major holdings, bought back significant stakes in Atlas Copco and Stora Kopparberg from Volvo, and established Patricia Industries, which became a core component of Investor AB. Peter secured the family's position in the companies that defined their empire and extended their reach into the next generation. Today, the empire is in the hands of the 5th generation, Jacob Wallenberg, Peter Wallenberg Jr., and their cousin Marcus Wallenberg now lead the business. According to the Financial Times, the total Wallenberg business empire is valued at an estimated $250 billion. The foundations hold more than $30 billion in assets independently. Their publicly listed holdings are worth over $60 billion. None of this appears on Swedish rich lists because the wealth is not held personally. It sits inside foundations that cannot be liquidated for private use, cannot be distributed among heirs, and cannot be targeted by inheritance taxes. That structure, first created when Knut Wallenberg chose a foundation over personal inheritance, has now preserved Wallenberg wealth through 6 generations. The family motto is a Latin phrase that translates as "to be and not to seem." They rarely give interviews. When they do, the subject is business, institutions, or philanthropy. The journalist Håkan Lindgren, who has written extensively about the Wallenbergs, observed that every Swedish government, regardless of political orientation, understands it must work with the Wallenberg family. That judgment is not a criticism. It is simply a description of how power is distributed in Sweden. The Wallenberg story raises questions that stay open. How much of their wartime cooperation with Nazi Germany was strategic survival, and how much was genuine complicity? Could they have done more for Raoul? Did business with the Soviets take priority over pressing for his release? The family has never offered detailed public answers. What is clear is that across more than 160 years, through 2 world wars, the Cold War, economic crises, and the deaths and disgraces of individual members, the Wallenberg position has held. The Wallenberg story doesn't end with a clear verdict. It lingers in the gray space between philanthropy and power, survival and complicity, and silence and influence. For more than a century and a half, they have shaped industries, governments, and lives, often without a signature, a speech, or a public face. Their legacy isn't carved into monuments or headlines, but embedded quietly into the systems that still run the modern world. If this story made you think, challenged your assumptions, or revealed a side of history you hadn't considered, take a moment to support the channel. Like the video, share it with someone who should see it, and subscribe for more deep dives into the hidden families, forces, and decisions that shape our world from behind the scenes. Thank you for watching.